Well, hello everyone. Here, show you right here. I'm talking about right here of scams a lot of times, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That what do scams usually mean? Well, they mean buys is toward it, like a certain, like tricks and other ways of how to be able to retrieve information, right? And of course, whenever it comes to understanding about your advertisements, mainly about advertisements, right? So a lot of times it sure seems that way that do we maybe think about that is toward it, maybe like an overprint. An example right here of an overprint right here. So every time you do think about scams, a lot of times you want to know too that overprint pretty much means is toward it whenever you're going to be looking at an advertisement or some source for article, and you see that that you have text and writing and all that all printed on a like a bold ink right here, and so this right here was supposed to be an example here of any source of advertisement, right? But it sure seems that way that that advertisement, or if it was supposed to be an advertisement, but still that like everybody else might say is toward that whenever you do look at something like this in 102, what exactly does it remind you of necessarily? Well, what does it remind me of a lot of times? That really that why would you want to go ahead and place different text and writing all over the page like that, and thinking as to where, okay, you go ahead and just try an experiment, and like anybody say, really like what does that really teach any of us? Whenever if you were to actually do something like that. And 102 is to where that to me it's just like hold a magnifying glass up to a newspaper, right? So that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we think about that in 102 that that whenever it comes to understanding about documents, though, a lot of times and 102 that that you look at a document like that, and 102 that you look at a document, and 102 that but another thing that I want to talk about right here is talk about PDF files and talk about for distiller files, right? But it sure seems that way that in a number of whenever it comes to measurements of pixels and all that, so it's like that so this one-page document right here did contain images that contain maybe quite a few 100 pixels or so, just to be able to fit onto a document. But talk about over here, talk about for scams, and I know that most of us have had our experience with understanding about what exactly are scams, and it's like, well, it's another way of saying as to where that somebody pretending to be working for a company, or maybe if it is maybe related. I'm like, if it's a lot of it has to do with maybe a fake fake websites and fake so it sure seems that way that that's pretty much what it is right here. Is that if you're trying to explain to anybody that what exactly is a good example of a scam, and it's like it's pretty much is to where you look at that to where that it's provided like to where that by it's fake, and so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time you think about that in 102 that a lot of the work see here, I'll go ahead and put right here, talk about for fake right here, and fake, and so it's like fake, not real. So every time you think about that, and you always want to know too that with scams a lot of times, scams that whenever you do find out about any scams or anything like that go on, and 102 that what is a good example of how you want to describe for a scam, and say as to where it's all about is to where that it's not the real it's not real, it's all about is to where that you go ahead and so that not the real the actual stuff, and so you have right here, you talk about for fake right here, and but still So whenever you look at a print like this right here, and the thinking is toward, okay, yeah, that another way of how you want to describe, scams though is like is toward, yeah, that companies and scammers, bad actors, they're going to go ahead and figure out ways of how they're going to go ahead and try to, send, especially, especially by email also, but still that, but the example that I'm talking about here is based on a newspaper article, right? So a lot of times that that the way we think about this right here is that you see all this writing right here, and that you're always thinking is toward, really that why do you think that you would want to go ahead and print something like this, or maybe save a file with something like this with all these text and lettering all over it? And everybody else might say is toward really that you're going, if anything, you're going to go ahead and just use it, just for references toward that you go ahead and start out a document with just a simple thumbnail image right there in the background, right? So like, let's just say that if that simple thumbnail is going to include something like maybe a still image or something like that, and 102 that that still image, yeah, is like something like that right there, and so it's like 102 that you'll use a few of those images right there, and I think it's toward that you'll use the images right there, and 102 that with those images, and then thinking is toward, okay, yeah, that with those images, but then also that whenever it comes to understanding about is toward it whenever it comes to media though, and so you place these images right here, and then on top of that, you're going to go ahead and include these text right here. So like, let's just say if you're trying to print out a document, and 102 that if you're trying to print out any source of document, right, and you're 102 that why would you want to place all these text all over right here? And it's really hard to read whenever you do that. And the main reason why I like I tell everybody too that the main reason, of course, is toward it. If you're just trying to make sure, I'm like, for the right, but really, what exactly is it that's really telling anybody, whenever you do that? And like say, well, really, that if you're trying to, I'm like, if you go ahead and place text all over, like anybody say, it's like, to me, I look at it more like invisible ink, by the way, that it's, whenever it's hard to read, that's another, I guess if that's another example of invisible ink, but then at the same time that, we're talking about is toward it whenever it comes to scam alerts, though, and, thinking is toward, okay, with most, scams that, when we do speak about scams, though, that there are another way of how you want to call, like maybe third party or like fake information, fake fake identification a lot of times, and it sure seems that way. That's usually how it's been. Like it's all fake right there. It's not real, and so a lot of times it sure seems that way. That every time we do speak about scams, and thinking is toward, okay, that every time we do think about that in 102, that are you whenever you do read any source of prints or newsletters, though, and at 102 that that whenever you do look at a newspaper, though, and let's just say if you put the print text like that, and say that you can't really read that very well, but still that but on the other hand, though, that if you want to look at that like maybe a little bit like a backdrop, like wallpaper right there. So like, let's just say that if I could go ahead and I'm like like everybody else would say is that so if you were to go ahead and move one of these images up front right here, and 102 that you go ahead and move one of those images to the front right there, and just thinking is toward it, go ahead and just if anything place one of those images in the front right there. And so well, what does that usually mean whenever you do that? And so it sure seems that way that it's kind of like in the background right there, right? So it's like every time you think about that, and at 102 that do most graphic artists really find that for any reason at all that that you're going to use it maybe like maybe for a stamp, or if you're just trying to hide mainly maybe if you're just trying to make that to where the not everybody really wants to pay attention to that part, right there of the image, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That to me though, that's already starting to kind of remind me just a little bit of how invisible ink works. And so if we're gonna have like invisible ink or anything such as if you're gonna be looking at an actual document and 102 that a lot of things that you cannot see in that document that maybe that you didn't know about. So a lot of times it's like you're 102 that every time you think about that scams, so a lot of times the 102 is toward you you have to do a background check. You'll do a background and a background check and a background check, and so a lot of times it's like so it's like almost everything that you do nowadays that even if it's taking care of a bill or maybe filling out an application, right? Almost everything that you're doing nowadays would require like a simple background check and all that. But it's like you're always 102 that whenever you do look at any electronic form of a document though, and you're always warned toward it that whenever you do write down any text and writing or anything like that, why do you think that like a lot of professionals might say that you would go ahead and write down any text and writing like this, or maybe even sideways? You would do that for any reason at all, for like overprint options or anything like that, but maybe just to see what it looks like or whichever. But I'll tell you one thing, everybody, that it sure seems that way. The text and writing tool seems to be like everybody else wants to look at that like wallpaper. Like if you want to look at that like wallpaper, to where it's supposed to be like a masking tool, to where it's supposed to block certain areas of that part of the newspaper. So like let's just say that if you're trying to block out, or if you're trying to leave out certain parts of the media, and then you would go ahead and just you would use that option to where you go ahead and place a few text right over here over the image, and it makes it harder to read. And but on your hand, that when we do speak about scams a lot of times, and it's like it's fake information all, but I just really think too in a lot of ways that when we do speak about talking about images and media right here, and I'll show everybody here that talking about with this text and writing right here, that whenever it comes to understanding about writing, in 102 that that if you're going to be looking at an advertisement, kind of like this right here, I'm sure most of us have gotten email related items kind of like that right there, and then also maybe if it's news articles, and 102 that so talking about for the news, and then also Hope wins for, but still it's like United States voting, and then but still but half the time when we do read at the news media, a lot of times you 102 that could you possibly look at some of the media, like if we would actually do the measurements right here. If you would actually do the measurements right here, and at 102 with a lot of that news media right there, that if you were to actually look at an article right here, 33 millimeters. 33 millimeters, and let's just say if that was the measurement right there was up to 33 millimeters right there of the diameter, right? And so if you were to actually do the measurements right there in 102 that for millimeters, so if you would actually do the measurements right there in 102 that if you zoom in real close, maybe you would not be able to tell how big that article is right there, but then but if you zoom out for sure that you would be able to tell. Then that's what it looks like right there. That so it's like U102 that about right here why do you think like anybody says toward it, especially the coupons and everything, but still. But it's like if you're going to be looking at any sorts of advertisements, right, that you would maybe see that to where like maybe on the bottom right corner that you would see something like that, like with the QR code scanner, a lot of times that you would see something like that. You don't actually see an actual print, a readable print, but you see as a QR code, and still. But at the same time, it's like with scams, and I know, like I tell people too that even about your retirement and then also about the elections and all that is usually what I see them, but it's like every time you do turn around, though, and it's like 102 that don't you think that maybe most scams would say is toward if you were to actually if you were to actually if you would actually develop the advertisement yourself, and for any reason at all, but like everybody else would say, is that scams are usually is toward bad actors and all that come up, but half the time you're always 102 but you would think that with this digital technology nowadays that you might even think is toward just for extra protection and for identity, just for security purposes and all, but still, it's like so every time you think about that, and you're always 102 just to make it easier, and that's usually the way I think about too, that a lot of scams out there would say is toward that sounds so easy, to make it sound so easy. So easy, and so really, a lot of scam artists, by the way, would say is toward that so anything that you hear, even on the radio, for sure, anything that you do hear on the radio, that you're going to maybe say is toward a lot of these scams, a lot of these scammers might say is toward if something sounds so good to be true, too good to be true, or maybe if it's make it sound easier. I'm like, that sounds real easy, but it sure seems that way that to making it easier, and then maybe making it more popular or so, and anything else that you think that you would want to add to. But it's like you 102 is toward it do you think that for the most part that most scammers might say that they can go ahead and get a way to find a way to get your attention about something advertised, right? That they would be able to get your attention about something, so that way they'll be able to see as to where okay, we'll go ahead and make it easier and convenient, and we'll go ahead and form an ad. We'll go ahead and develop an advertisement with the contact information, with it, fake advertisement, with the fake contact number and the fake information, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about that, and 102 is toward it, that really, for any purpose at all, that why it's like with most scammers, it's like say, well, really, that you see that most of the time, whenever it comes to scammers, right, is toward it making it easier, making it sound so easy, and a lot of times that's usually what I hear. But still, that a simple background check, like anybody says, toward it, whenever you do, if you were to actually look at the number, and you might even see is toward okay, if that number looks like it's not recognized, or if anything, it might be So it's like so there's ways of how you want to detect that, and like anybody might even say is to where. So if you were to go ahead and use an image like these right here, to where if you go ahead and set the text layout right here into like a program like InDesign, and if you were to put like in writing right here, but just kind of give like an example right there to where that talk about for scammers, and so if you were to use it for an example right there of like no, I got you, like an no, not so fast, not so smart, and so a lot of times it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking too is toward okay, you go ahead and show somebody a document like this right here, But then if you go to the next page, and then that next page right there is a little bit more understandable, or that looks a little bit more like something that looks like the real thing, compared to from what you saw earlier. So it's like so every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too that every time you do think about scammers a lot of times, and it's like, a lot of scammers, they're going to be after the money and all that, but still, it's like, so every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too so every time you do think about scams a lot of times, what exactly is that telling all of us necessarily? I'm like, with scams, just be on high alert about your information, about what's visible, of course, and but it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about scams a lot of times, and you're always thinking is toward, besides about your retirement, if your retirement or if it's insurance, that you're always thinking is toward, that's fake right there, and between what is fake and what is considered real. So it sure seems that way, that this is something that we gotta pay attention to right here, is what is considered to be fake and what is considered to be real. So ways of how to fix that, of course, like you do a background check, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that everybody else might say is toward that, I'm like, if you go ahead and take you try to take 5 minutes. You'll try to use 5 minutes of your time, just to verify, where that message, where that mail came from. Take 5 minutes of your time. Take at least 5 minutes of your time to verify, just to clarify that it's coming from the actual company, right? So it sure seems that way. Everybody else might say, well, really, how do you do that? Well, really, that there are quite a few ways of how to do that, in which it would take a little bit time, but like everybody else might say that maybe another reason maybe why a lot of customers might say that they would proceed with something if they don't want to spend the time. So if you don't want to spend the time, for sure, if you don't want to spend the extra 5 minutes, just to do a background check, or you don't know how that works or whichever, then a lot of everybody else might even say is that that's usually what happens, is that if you don't want to take the time, or if you don't want to spend the extra time. But still, what can you really teach anybody whenever you do spend the time? So it's like, say, a lot of scammers are going to be after, what's easier. You keep that in mind, everybody. Keep that in mind, that a lot of scammers are going to be looking after toward that you're making it more easier, making it easier. So if you get a phone call about a number that you don't recognize, and let's just say that, it's going to be over the fact about that, making it sound so easy. It's so easy, too good to be true, but still. So in a lot of ways, it sure seems that way, that every time we do think about scams a lot of times, and you always want to know too, that you would always want to know too, that why do you think that you would think that with most scammers? So why do you think that if anything, that it will be about your retirement, or maybe about your health insurance or anything, and that is why it sure seems that way, that you would use this trick right here toward it. You would place all these text and writing right here onto one-page document right here, right? And it's all about is to where it's you're trying to trick. It's all about a trick, right? It's all about the tricky ways. So if you want to look at it that way too, tricky ways to protect your information. 5 minutes to verify. So like it's all about it's a trick, right? And I don't know if I would recommend. I'm like So it's like So if I were to say, I'm like, for a trick, and so really, you would see that you would mainly see that, like, if you're trying to, for any word problems or anything, but still, we're talking about trying to keep our information protected, like, even including the information on our profiles and everything. And so that's why it sure seems that way. That everybody else might say that this all this right here, of course, like everybody else might say, is toward that you learned a similar thing whenever you were trying to solve a few word problems. If you were trying to solve a word problem, like you were trying to give somebody some advice about how much string that they need just to be able to if it's if you're trying to do yard work or something like that. But any source of word problem, no. But if we're talking about maybe a printed document right here, do you think that maybe that if you would have to measure the document first, or would you have to mix and match? And I guess a lot of professionals might even say is toward that that's usually what they do. Match to clarify that your information is correct right there. So yeah. So a lot of personnel over there at the offices, by the way, would say is toward that that's what they do. They match your information to make sure that everything is all correct, and just for verification purposes, just to verify that everything is all correct, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to understanding about scams and all, but oh, I'm just trying to lie, and I'm just trying to, I'm like, I'm trying to type something right here, but it don't even look like it's going into that same spot that I selected earlier. Anyway, oh, I know, I got a lot of writing right here. I got a lot of writing right here, but I'll go and just write match right here. So yeah, and then if you want to highlight that, maybe in red, but still, mix and match or something like that. Yeah, that's usually what there at the offices. That's usually what they do. Is that the information that you entered, which it needs to match. It needs to match. So it's like everybody else might say that. So if you were to actually create that into a layout, so that way everybody can see it right here. I'll go ahead and make that bigger so that way everybody can see right here. But still, yeah. So it's like, so we can all see that right there. It don't really have to be that large, but really that just to be able to protect your information, that a lot of offices might say is toward it. The information for what matches, it needs to match, so that way, just to have a permission and just to be able to, to authorize, just to have permission or so, just to have access to that information, it needs to match, and so yeah, and I really think that mix and match, if that's really the best tool that we have nowadays whenever it comes to detecting scams and detecting fake information, right? So it's like you're always want to know too that every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too that that if you get an advertisement in the mail and want to know too that then if you see something that kind of catches your attention to where that don't look right or they don't look real, and so every time, even if it's the elections or if it's maybe sales catalogs or anything like that, that you always want to know too that really what's the catch about that? Well, really that the catch is making sure that that all your information is all correct. So like let's just say that if you're going to be filling out an application, there's ways for verification, right? But still, but a lot of things where I do see nowadays, it seems like it's all about is toward it. You're trying to get your information to match, for what's on, in the system, right? So it's like, so every time you do think about scam alerts, though, and you're thinking this toward, okay, yeah, scam alerts most of the time. That with most scams, that what you usually see is like to where making it sound too good to be true, and that's usually what I read about. Actually, by the way, everybody, that whenever scam artists are making something sound so simple, so it's like so easy, and so if they're they're going to try to make it look easier. So it's like if you see something like that, and let's just say that yeah, if something looks to be so easy, then maybe that's something that we all should think about. Is to where that if you're trying to yeah, if you're trying to if you're trying to do something, and let's just say that if that looks so easy right there, that looks real easy, the way that you do that right there. So like everybody else might say that that I know for sure a lot of scam artists out there are going to maybe say is to where that's usually how they how they work is to where that making it look a lot easier, trying to make something, make it look a lot easier for the customers, that this is all what you got to do right here, make it look easier for you, but still. But on the other hand, that I just really think in a lot of ways, everybody, that whenever it comes to understanding about scams, though, it's like you want to know too that a lot of your information right there, and that you're always want to know too that especially if it's over something real important, especially if it's something important, though, that you're always warned to where that why is it that you're always having to do a verification check, just to make sure that it's okay, that that's so it's like so we may have heard that we may have learned this trick a long time ago, whenever we had so it sure seems that way that a lot of scam artists nowadays, it seems like that they want to think of all kinds of ways of how to get people's attention, right? And so one of those ways, of course, is to make something sound so easy and convenient. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just sign here. But still. Yep, and I can tell everybody here too that based on from my experience especially, that's usually what I see right there is that as long as they can get your attention somehow, but still, it's like when we do speak about scams a lot of times, and you're always thinking as toward what are the ways of how you can avoid a lot of that, from being bothered all the time from all these messages, and maybe being bothered all the time by any text, the messages that you don't want, and like everybody say, do not call, or something like that. But half the time it sure seems that way that could we also think about that to where that whenever it comes to most scam alerts, though, is to where that do we think that for verification or something like that, is to where that if you were to actually look at something and maybe stare at it for at least stare at it for at least 20 seconds. You stare at it for maybe for a minute and just look at it. And you want to know too as to what exactly is it that's telling everybody. What is all this telling you right here? And like everybody else might say, is that what exactly is it that's telling you in general? Well, really that right there looks like it's about the elections, or that right there. I'm like, yeah. So it's like so really that even if this was related to retirement, or if it was if it was insurance, life insurance, or maybe if it's spin down premiums or something like that, and you're always want to know too is toward it not all senior citizens really want to bother with all the complicated stuff, and so that's why it seems like that you would see those scam alerts on higher alert, is to where that not everybody wants to deal with all that stuff, and so that's why it seems like to where that making it sound so easy, we get your attention, okay, all you have to do is just sign right here and we'll take care of the rest of it for you, or something like that. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that so every time we do think about that, and you're always want to know too, is toward it, maybe that's another reason, maybe why that you would want to go ahead and keep a lot of the information for your reference, just so that way you can go ahead and say that, okay, this right here matches from the discussion from earlier. So let's just say if you were to have a meeting with with a cousin, if you were to have a meeting with somebody, with a friend of yours, maybe with a neighbor, and talking about this stuff right here, and I want to know too that that with scam alerts that anything that matches from I'm like yeah that don't look right there. So yeah, so it seems like to me though it's like with scams though that is toward it you're trying to make it harder for the scam, like yeah, harder for them, but then easier for you to understand. So like just to be able to protect your information just for verification purposes, that you would do this to where you would go ahead and set like yeah to where that you would show somebody a few examples of yeah for what is right and what is wrong about certain tricks. So it's like yeah, so let's just say that like everybody else might say that you go ahead and I'll go ahead and select an image right here, but yeah, so if you were to place a few images right here and maybe make them smaller, and like I want to know too that why would you want to go ahead and do that right there, to where you go ahead and then shrink the image right there and place it all over the page like that. And 102 is that okay, yeah, that you do that, and then you go ahead and form another duplicate right here, and then you form another duplicate at about right here. And you're thinking too is toward okay, yeah, that you would form a duplicate, but then at the same time though, it's like you 102 that really that whenever you do something like that, where you place do the copy, where you paste all these all this media right here, and like everybody else would say is toward I can't read all that. I don't understand what is all this all about right here. So it's like yeah, so pretty much it's like do we think that for most scams though that do you think that maybe it's good to go ahead and recognize the work right here to make it harder for those scammers, just to be able to get the information, for any authorized users, right? So it's like yeah, so it's like people might say is toward and I know a lot of bad actors and scammers would say is toward that make it easier for our clients, and you're going to go ahead and just you'll go ahead and send them a text or a message with a fake ID and a fake code or something like that. But then still that so it's all about testing the mind, right? So it's like here to test you about so it's like yeah, so whenever you do mix and match a lot of times, but still that whenever we do think about a scam a lot of times, you're thinking is toward okay yeah that whenever you do think about a scam a lot of times, and you're thinking is toward okay yeah that whenever you do think about a scam, that means is towards fake. It's not real. Yeah, that's not real right there. That's not real, but this is testing you. And so it sure seems that way. That yeah, it's what is real about it? Well, really, it's all about testing your mind, right? So it's like every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking is toward okay, yeah, that maybe to teach somebody a lesson. Maybe also just to kind of get you, get an idea about what exactly is what's going on here on this document. And so right now it looks like yeah that it was a clear document, but then now it's all scrambled up with all these prints and all these headings and all that. But still, that do you think that kind of gets you an idea about as to where that if you're trying to block something, or maybe if you're trying to get an idea about what is considered real and what is considered fake, counterfeit, and so that is why it sure seems that way. That every time we do think about that, and you're always thinking is toward okay, yeah, that whenever we do speak about scam alerts and 102, that okay, yeah, that scams, but still that for if that matches for compared to the accurate information, like say yeah, spend 5 minutes just to verify and all, but still that so half the time it's like yeah, the way you think about that, and 102, the yeah, not everybody knows what that means right there, but still. But on the other hand, that yeah, if you're able to recognize all this right here, then for sure. So it's like yeah, you want to make it easier for you, easier for the client, but then harder for the scammer, right? So that's why it sure seems that way. That not everybody's going to recognize all this right here, and tell everybody that yeah, a lot of it had to do with elections and also about but still that but a lot of the scams that I do see nowadays are related to elections and also retirements and also the Democratic and Republican parties and all that stuff. But still, at the same time, it sure seems that way. That every time we do think about scams, though, it's like from ever since from back in 1991, though, it sure seems that way. That a lot of times it was postal mail, or if anything, it was over the radio, and so it sure seems that way. That you turn on the radio and stuff seems to be a lot of things seems to be so too good to be true. But a lot of times it's like so it's like with this digital technology, right? But every time you do think about that, and you're always thinking as to where that don't we want to think of maybe a few simple steps right here to where that visible only to you, or visible trick to where that visible, and so only something only you can understand, and I guess that is one good way of how you can avoid scams, is to where you show somebody a trick to where that if you are familiar, if you can just think about something as to where to think about that, to where that you want to make something to be recognized to you and somebody that you know and trust with that information, right? And make it harder for that other person to recognize the person, the people, the person that you don't want, that you don't want to retrieve the information, right? So to make it harder for them, but then easier for you, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That when we do think about scam artists a lot of times, and you're always thinking as toward okay, that whenever you do so if we were to think about distiller though, and if you would actually look at an actual PDF file document like that right there in 102, that PDF file document right there, and or it's a GIF file or something like that, and not everybody knows what that means right there, what that is, and that is why it sure seems that way. That when we do speak about digital technology, though, that we're talking about a lot of this media right here that contains over 3,000 pixels, right? Just to be able to put this together. Just to be able to put this together right here, that all this right here, contains, over, up to, I think it's 6,000. Up to 6,000 pixels, right? And so that is why that, so every time we think about that in 102, that so if you would actually say this to an actual Word document, or maybe an attachment, though, that everybody else would be looking at it like this, but they're not able to understand all of it, and that's why it seems like that maybe that's another reason why that a lot of publishing companies would use QR codes, just because of that reason, just because that all that printing and all those details right there, that that they won't all fit on the page right there, all the information right there, it won't fit on just one document or even 4 documents, and maybe that's another reasons why that QR codes are used, but still that but really though that but we really want to focus on what you're familiar with and what is recognized, right? So it's like everybody else might say is toward it. Whenever you do you receive an email, and then maybe whenever you do receive a bill, or maybe any source of a brochure, or anything that you do get in the mail, and think is toward it, that that a lot of sales ads, they're making it sound so easy, just to take care of something, but still that but one thing that you can the one thing that you can do is knowing is as to where if you recognize something, anything that's on that ad right there. So it's like so I really think that he did. That's really the key factor in matters, just to remember, is as to where that whenever you do see something odd or real fishy or something like that. And 102 is to where that, yeah, well, if you recognize it, and then maybe if you're able to identify if it's a real or fake. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about scams, though, in 102, that, yeah, well, really, that, do you really have to be familiar with it just to be able to detect if it's accurate? And but anyway, but the way I think about those, I type up for matching right here. But anyway, I hope it helps everything. But other than that, the way I think about it, you just don't understand scam. But one thing I did want to also add right here is that with the writing right here, and 102, that with the writing, that whenever we do put an overprint, right? But still, whenever you do, if you were to actually trying to print off this document right here, that say with the distiller, that you can actually check the transparency, and say that if you were to actually trying to print this document on actual paper, that a lot of that media may not appear on the print. And I can see right here the especially with the typo, with the errors and all that, but still the corrections and all that, but still. So it's like, so if you were to actually trying to print out something, for sure, if you were to actually trying to print out something, for sure, that you would have to check to make sure that there's no errors on the links. But but still, and for sure that if it was a PDF file document, you should be able to print that out directly. But like anybody say, if it's flat, based on the printing quality, right? But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good day.